We are in South Pasadena at the historic Swami Vivekananda house, where Swami Vivekananda himself stayed. Ajaram vyatam niracharacharam tatpadam darshitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. Sthulatadum gajena vadanandam bahuduram sundaram prasyandam madagandhalubdhamadpavyalo nagandasthalam Tantagharuitaridarirai sindhur shobhakaram Deshairasutta ganapatim siddhipradam kamadam Rajitam nirvikalpam sarsadakil vedati tamekasvarupam Prakriti vikriteshunyam nityamanandamurtim Vimala Paramahamsam Ram Krishnam Bhajamaha Nirupam Atisukshmam Nishprapancham Niriham Gagana Sadrisham Isham Sarvabhutanivasam Triguna-rahita Satchit Brahmarupam Varenyam Vimala Paramahamsam Ram Krishnam Bhajamaha Vitaritumavatirnam jnana bhakti prashanti Pranegavita chittam jiva dukkha sahishnum Dhrita sahaja samadhim chinmayam komalangam Vimala paramahamsam Ram Krishnam bhajamaha. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Mahamai Ki Jai. Jai Swamiji Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Jai Raja Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Vivekananda We have here the seal of the order and garden. So Swamiji would have had a view of the garden from his bedroom, which is this room. This side, of course, there would have been open land or maybe forest. No buildings, other buildings yet. And this was his bedroom. Now we'll go downstairs and a narrow hallway and a very steep stairway down. Yes, everyone, there are 58 people joining us from around the world, and we are here together. Swami Vedarupananda, Swami Sarvadevananda, Swami Satyamayananda, Brahmacharya Sim, Brahmacharya Satya, Swami Atma Tattvananda, Brahmacharini Panchatapa.
And there we have...
And someone is here, Brahmachari Dinanath and Swami Mahayogananda.
So welcome everybody to Swamiji House. You know, you're going to have a very intimate feeling today about this wonderful old-fashioned house in South Pasadena where Swamiji stayed for 6 weeks at the beginning of 1900. That was a long time. And he entered totally into the family life of this place, touched them deeply for the rest of their lives, and also gave some of his great talks, Christ the Messenger, over in Pasadena, which is another whole cup of tea, a city somewhere up north of us somewhere. So I would like you to feel, as I did when I was here for 13 years, when it came into the society, that it's a living room. It's a parlor, it's a home. In the late style of the late, 1800s. And Swamiji was very informal. He would come down with his, what do they used to call it, dressing gown. And in this particular play, this particular Act 3, Scene 2, was so informal that it could reach right down inside you and grab your heart. I really appreciate what the Swami Vivekananda has selected today for readings, which we have every year after 4th of July here. The relevance, I think, you'll see. Because there are just a few of us here today, as it happens, living a life of informality. And imagine, I'm feeling a little more concretely than ever before. What are the people in this room, in a gathering such as we're having now, in 1900, was Swami Vivekananda. And in that mood, you can say one of the greatest men that's ever lived. And in another mood, you can say one of the greatest friends that we as individuals, a person could ever have. So one of the 3 sisters who were here, there are 9 people here, including their father, 3 generation, she was the one who actually started the work in Hollywood by inviting the Swami to come down and begin there some 29 years later. And she fed him the same meal, that she cooked for him here for the Vivekananda Pujas. We still have it. And she said not only did Swamiji come to all meals, but he ate almost every kind of food, apparently without ill effect. As we have seen, he had a good breakfast, right here in the kitchen, or the dining room here. For lunch, there was usually lamb, and there were vegetables, all sorts of which he liked, particularly peas. In place of dessert, Mrs. Hansborough remembered, that's one of the 3 sisters, we would have fruit. He was especially fond of grapes. But then she goes on to say some kind of fruits he disliked, and they were talking about Lent and giving up something that you really like. He said, well, if I was that kind of person, but I'm going to be mischievous. I'm going to do something I don't like, so you can skip the guavas. I'm going to give up guavas. They never served guavas again. Often, Swamiji would invite one person or another from his morning class, which would probably be in Pasadena or LA, I don't know, to lunch at the Meads. Now, this is here, the Mead sisters. And in addition, Miss McLeod, that's Tontine, the greatest picture I've ever seen is here. It's one of these pictures, it's a painting that's real. I invite everyone, somebody, you all come sometime to Swami, make sure you try over to see that picture. Tontine, one of the real American friends, as she called herself, of Vivekananda, and Mrs. Leggett from, the Leggetts from New York, who would come from Los Angeles to the classes, were frequent lunch guests. We've never read this before, Swami, on this day here, Saturday after 4th of July in South Pasadena. These conversations at these gatherings were lively and aglow with the wealth of insight he would bring to them. Sometimes, perhaps often, the talk would turn to India, to that land never far from his heart, to those people whose problems could at times plunge him into silent despair, at times wring from him some impassioned protest. On one occasion, when Mrs. Leggett was there, Mrs. Hansberg related, Swamiji, who was walking up and down, said that actually, this is kind of warm in American's heart, actually, forgive us if you're listening from England today, the English did not come to India to conquer the Hindus, but to teach them. Well, that's all right. So anyway, at this, Mrs. Leggett, who always agreed with everything Swamiji said, remarked in admiration of the gentle Hindu, how very nice. I think she's trying to change the subject of conversation. Do you think, Swamiji went on, that a handful of Englishmen could rule India if we had a militant spirit? And so forth. But the best lunches of all, here we are today, were the picnics that took place on the open top of the nearby hill. Because the hill, there's a huge hill right behind us here. When I came, it was all open and you could climb up there, no houses. And look at the ladies with all of their hats. We would make up a party of people who were attending Swamiji's classes, more or less regularly, Mrs. Hansberg related, one of the three sisters, or he would even hold some of his smaller class groups up there. Naturally, the talk was always on spiritual subjects up there. You have seen that photograph of Swamiji in a picnic group. It was taken on top of that hill. In this photograph, Swamiji is sitting cross-legged at what might be called the head of the picnic cloth. On his left sits Mrs. Hansborough, identified by her daughter. Behind him stands Mrs. Wyckoff, our sister Lalita, who really founded the work with Swami Vivekananda in Hollywood by inviting him down from Oregon. And on his right are Mrs. Bruce and so forth. On either side, one can see two or three of the guests, 1890s style, 1900 is the year. Ladies with the long skirts, tight bodices, leg of mutton sleeves, and overburdened hats of the period. Right down the street was an ostrich farm. And they grew the ostriches to pluck the feathers, tail feathers. So it was slightly the dignity of the ostrich heard no other part of the ostrich. They grew back for hats, big ostrich feathers. So anyway, the photograph was taken at a relaxed moment, such as we're sharing here today. Two of the women talked together, and Swamiji appears to be reading with amusement a scrap of paper. Thank you, Swami. Veda Rupananda for this selection. About the size of a fortune from a Chinese cookie, while Mrs. Bruce reads over his shoulder. See it there? To judge from the absence of coats, shawls, or wraps, the weather was pleasant, as it was most every day that winter. It was said to be the pleasantest winter in 5 years, Mrs. Hansberg noted, and indeed, from the farmer's point of view, the weather was altogether too pleasant. A drought was underway, and the ministers of the various churches in Pasadena were banding together to pray for rain. Unhappily, there are no known records of Swamiji's talks and informal classes on this sunny hilltop. Yet from a snatch of conversation that Mrs. Hansborough remembered, it is clear that he was seeing all the world, its good and its evil alike, as a divine play, all supremely good, with a capital G. That's very significant. On one of the picnics, a young woman, a Christian Scientist, put forth the belief that one should teach people to be good. Here's vintage Swami Vivekananda. You know, you never know where these people are coming from. Why? Oh, Swamiji smiled, first of all, and waved his hand to indicate the trees in the countryside. It's quite a view from up there. The Indians were down there. There's something called an Indian well back there. Why should I desire to be good, in quotes, he asked. All this is his handiwork. Capital H, shall I apologize for his handiwork? If you want to reform John Doe, go and live with him. Don't try to reform him. If you have any of the divine fire, he will catch it. And I ask you to reflect upon how many husbands have been reformed in precisely that way by their wives, and how slim the success may have been when they tried to reform him outwardly right from the beginning. In those still warm days of January, seated where they could overlook the rich valley, I've been there, with its escarpment of snow-peaked mountains from which Hubble found that the universe was expanding, and all of the galaxies were merely called clouds in our own galaxy. They thought inside were other galaxies by the billions, with maybe 7 sextillion stars. That's what was found. You can see the Mount Wilson right from the front porch. Snow-peaked mountains, the picnickers listened to his words and felt themselves lifted into another level of existence altogether. The picnickers listened to his words and felt themselves lifted into another level of existence altogether, a level in which they surely caught, in quotes, the divine fire that blazed in their midst. When he had talked for some time, Mrs. Hansberry said, the air would become surcharged with a spiritual atmosphere. I forget, there was Hansberry and Wyckoff. Does anybody remember the third sister's name offhand? Doesn't matter, but she's wonderful. And she spoke of one occasion in particular, when absorbed in some subject he was discussing, he talked for 6 hours without interruption, from 10 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. The Swami's going to pull my whistle here in a moment, but I'm not worried about that. I got to tell you this song. I'm a Vivekananda, and I happen to be Gilbert and Sullivan addicts. We're addicted to it. And we know it chapter to verse the way fundamentalists know the New Testament, John 13. The Mikado is a spoof. It's Victorian, sister. It's Victorian. And here the Mikado. And his daughter-in-law is kind of like Queen Victoria, you know. But anyway, he's deciding on the punishment, very stereotypical English notion of the day, that would fit the crime. And he says, for society prattlers that chatter and bleat and bore shall have to hear sermons by mystical Germans that preach from 10 till 4. All right? So the air, she said, I'm shivering, was just vibrant with spirituality by the time it was over. He lived here for 6 weeks, which was a long time for him, right here in this room. And they would have these high talks and fun talks and talks about the cooking. And what must the air have been like in the Meads' house? The sisters felt, as one of them later said, now hang on. Fasten your seatbelt. Each one of you can evaluate this the way you will and want to, as if Christ himself were in their midst. Whatever he did in his most relaxed or most active moments, his mind in its deep layers was plunged consciously in God. For such was his nature. He himself, my friends, was another galaxy. Don't you see? We have Ramakrishna as a galaxy. We actually have 2 little galaxies in the southern hemisphere where you come from in Brazil, called the larger and the smaller Magellanic Cloud. Our, Milky Way galaxy is walking the dogs. And from those luminous depths, he brought a power that not only charged the air with spirituality, but could transform the whole tenor of one's thought, change the direction of one's life, lift one's burden. And this as though it were the most natural thing on earth. He did not seem a superhuman, remote being, but one's very own. I'm sorry, but you live here for a while. 13 years. Gadadhar stayed here for 20. This young man, how long have you been here, buddy? 25 years? 30? Anyway, you've kept the light in the window, the candle, our Swami. Swamiji, Mrs. Hans.
That's enough for you.
No. I'm sorry. You got to give me a little more time because this is too huge. You got to give. I knew you were going to do this. Anyway, Swamiji had a marvelous patience with all of us, Mrs. Hansberg recalled. He took away any feeling on our part that he was superior to us. Though some people found him aloof, I never did. I felt as though he was someone to whom I was closely related. Swamiji is our friend. That's what I'm trying to make. That lived in this home. Someone I had not seen, whom I had not seen for a long, long time, and who had been a long time coming. I had felt I carried a burden, not on my back, but on my chest, and after I met Swamiji, I felt the lifting of the burden that had been over my heart for so long. I had ceased to be conscious of it. Now, this is relevant, Swami, so you're going to be good. You can forgive me later. You'll see, because in a moment we're going to reenact this. This is a play today. This is Act 4, Scene 2. New paragraph. Better known and more concrete is the story of how Mrs. Wyckoff, our sister Lolita, whose great pictures in the living room in Vedanta, she moved into her brother's home in Hollywood. That's why we're there. Once experienced relief from physical and mental suffering just through contact with an object that had belonged to Swamiji, his pipe. Quote, sometime before Swamiji left South Pasadena, Mrs. Hansborough, her sister, related, he said one day, I always leave something behind. Wherever I go, I'm going to leave this pipe when I go to San Francisco. And of course, his atmosphere and his love. He left it on the mantelpiece in the dining room. And we kept it there for a long time as an ornament. Then one day Mrs. Wyckoff picked it up. Her hand was kind of idly going along the top of the sill. She had been suffering from some nervous ailment and had been having personal difficulties in her life. You see how Swamiji could reach the microcosm, the inner depths of one's personality and one's soul, individual, the Atman and Brahman. For some days, the pain of her illness had been almost unbearable, and this, added to her other troubles, made her feel extremely depressed. It's the best account of it I've ever heard. She went to the mantelpiece and picked up Swamiji's pipe. No sooner did she have it in her hand than she heard his voice saying, "Is it so hard, madam?" For some reason, she rubbed the pipe across her forehead, and instantly the suffering left her, and a feeling of well-being came over her.
Thank you for the wonderful exposition of Swamiji
At home.
In Pasadena,
South Pasadena.
South Pasadena. He felt really at home here, and he spent 6 weeks. I was speaking to someone yesterday in India. I was telling them about Vivekananda house. They said, "Don't tell me anymore. I'm getting jealous." Yes, originally 10 weeks. South Pasadena, 6 weeks. He felt at home. And one time, up on the ridge, one of the meat sisters, Helen, she was showing Swami Vivekananda this view and that view and this view. So he said, "Niece Helen, I have seen the Himalayas. Don't show me this view and that view. But I'll walk 100 miles to see a face of a human being. And that was what Swami Vivekananda was. He was a lover of mankind, a humankind. And in the US, here, amazingly, he found a representative American family where he could pour forth his love. In 1893, he met Robert Ingersoll, the great agnostic lecturer. He was a contemporary. He was a lawyer and he was an ex-Civil War veteran.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Union Soul.
They used to have a lot of debates. And one time, Robert Ingersoll, he tells Vivekananda, 50 years back, if you would have come here, you would be hanged. You would have been burnt. You would have been driven out of the villages. And amazing. That was the type of mindset then. They weren't exposed. As America was growing and maturing, it was in 1893 when they had a parliament of religions. And Swamiji traveled the length and breadth of this land. Teaching what? Teaching the harmony of religion. That's what the Parliament of Religions was. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. I used to wonder, why did Swami Vivekananda have to go back a second time? He had exhausted himself. He had given his everything from 1893, early 1893, till he left for London and Europe and went back. And after he reached India, his health was completely shattered. And the biographers say that the doctors advised a second long sea voyage in order to recoup his health. Well, I used to wonder. Yesterday I was thinking, what am I going to speak at the Vivekananda house? I said, yeah. It's been almost 127 years since Swamiji came here, 120 years, 1900, and behind 2020 year. Harmony of religions? Yes, there is harmony of religions, but this is on the surface. We have seen for the last couple of months the cracks opening up in society over pandemics, over George Floyd's death, and if those who have been following the situation here will know, I don't need to elaborate. But what Swamiji wanted, right on a rather deeper level, is harmony, yet absorbing each other's spirituality. And this we find here in the Mead house. The Mead family, 9 of them, absorbing spirituality. He tells Ralph, a 17-year-old who was extremely devoted to Swamiji, teaches him, Ralph, can you see your own eyes? No. God is like that. You see everything through God. This family was blessed, will be blessed. It will go down in the spiritual annals of not only the US, but of the whole world. They absorbed that spirituality. You heard Shiva say, yes, they felt as if Christ was here. And we see this now a kind of a necessity because of this fragmentation in society that's going on. We wonder what happened to Swami Vivekananda's great power that he unleashed in California, because it was here in California he gave one of his best lectures during second visit. And also, as he said, he poured his heart out. What happened to all that great work? What happened? Well, we have been swimming on the surface, talking only about harmony of this and that, but the counterpart of that harmony, of absorbing spirituality from other traditions and religions, was missing. Today, society needs to absorb the spirituality which is here. The Native Americans, they lived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They developed this spiritual land. This was a sacred land. Then we had the African Americans. They came with their intense spirituality. And somehow we distance ourselves from all these grand spiritual avenues. We need to rework our spiritual values, absorb that spiritual power that is within this land, and which Swamiji enhanced. It is this spirituality that's going to transform humanity and the world, like it was spirituality which transformed this house and their lives. Swami Vivekananda speaks of Mrs. Hansbrough. Oh, she worked so hard and hard and hard and hard. God bless her. And that was what the family was. They worked so hard. And Swamiji reached down to the youngest of the family, Dorothy, who was 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old. Interact with them. He was interacting with everyone. The Mead sisters and the fathers, the children. This was the microcosm, as Shiva says. That will be the life of America. And if this can be replicated over and over and over in homes, in churches, in schools, in temples, and synagogues, and mosques, this will be a great land once again. Because it is not for anything that someone like Vivekananda, who could shake the foundations of the earth, as his master says, could spend so much time, what, doing nothing? Oh yes, he was doing something. We've got to unravel, we've got to unfold his work. And that will be our responsibility, the future's responsibility. That will be Vivekananda's work. Swami Vivekananda's, this is Swami Vivekananda house. This will in time not only be Swami Vivekananda's house, but it will be a Vivekananda street, Vivekananda Pasadena, South Pasadena, Vivekananda's California, Vivekananda's USA, and Vivekananda's world. Vivekananda's cosmos and galaxy. That is left for all of us to work out Vivekananda's ideas. He has given us enough. We need to just do just a little and we'll be blessed. We are blessed. We don't realize how blessed we are. I used to dream about this place years and years. And I remember when I first came here, I couldn't believe I'm here. This is the place I used to believe and imagine and think. And here am I. And when I came here, oh, yes, it was that old spirituality. Oh, it's vibrant here. It's as if Swamiji has poured even more spirituality after 1900, because he is a living presence here. He is going to work through all of us. Let us all be instruments in the hands of Vivekananda and transform our lives and transform the world. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
We are blessed today, as we do, it is every year we celebrate this day, and this is a holy pilgrimage, as Swami Satyananda told so much, and we heard from the reading also, that here God incarnated different times, and it is in the different form. So once in the form of Vivekananda, Christ moved here. We can just think about that word, that itself is such an inspiration to think about it. Where we are standing, it's a holy land. Take up thy shoes, where we are standing, where you are standing. Huh? So this is, every dust of this house has a touch of that holy Vivekananda, holy of the holy. But that holiness, as Swami Vivekananda said, that we should not make him a statue or a photograph and start worshipping. But what Swami Vivekananda wanted us, that we should have to take his ideas and to implement in the life. So it is a great responsibility here to come over here. With coming over here, we should get inspiration to think that how a man, God as human being, can live, walk, talk. How he can inject the spirituality without an effort to anyone. But as you heard just now, we heard from Swami Satyananda talking about the absorbing the idea of each other. Swami Vivekananda came to preach this harmony, but as he said, it's on the tip. But what is the underlying truth? Underlying truth, he wanted to give religion, real religion, the spirituality. Religion is every country, it is there, but as Swamiji says, it has created exalted men of character in every religion. But people forget their philosophy, forget their ideal, and then just get involved into rituals and doctrines and dogmas. But Swami Vivekananda, from this place, how many wonderful lectures he has given to break those barriers of distinctive features which we separate with ourselves. And what he brought out, the inner divinity which is in us, how it can be manifested in our every movement, that was his call. And I see now, we don't understand with this turmoil what is going on everywhere. But if we have a little observing mind, we can find that in the background of it, a huge plan is working. And that plan is to bring something which was missing from the society's day-to-day outlook. People are coming to understand that we are connected. We are not separate. All this racism, this, that, what is going on, it's if we go to the background, the awakening, the cosmic awakening of the human personality and the mind, we find that they are thinking, where is the connection between us? How can we hate each other? And Vivekananda says, why can I not hate each other? Because I am in you. There is no you. It is me only. That's the foundation of Advaita Vedanta. And Vivekananda was an embodiment of Vedanta, Vedanta Murti. embodiment, living embodiment, as if Vedanta is moving in a physical frame. And that was Vivekananda. And unconsciously, the whole consciousness of US, even you can see how religion is going back to understand its original purpose. So many interfaith meetings, conferences are going on. So many noble-hearted people of all traditions are sitting together, and they're trying to understand the core of religion, what Swami Vivekananda expressed in his lectures again and again. The core of religion is the realization of the ultimate truth. And that truth is to be in union with all. So that awareness is unconsciously coming out of this turmoil which you see in the external. See, even it is good or bad, people may political language is different, but what we see, 50,000 people are assembling. For what? Peace, much. Every life, everyone's life has a value. Why you are thinking of others' life? Let how many people die? Who cares for that? Why these 50,000 people just gathered? Maybe I take it very simply as on the pure idea of identifying with everyone, that we cannot hurt anyone. And Swami Vivekananda said that you cannot hurt anyone because you hurt yourself. They do not know this philosophy maybe, but the feeling of connecting together and this many number spontaneously coming together, 50,000, 40,000, 20,000. But what is the message is coming out of this? That we belong to that oneness. And that oneness is to be expressed in our life, in social life, in living in the society, in our day-to-day activity, in our expression, to respect all. So this is the voice coming, respect for all. Their intense, their capacity or their own strength to live in the world equally. So this type of virtues are coming out unconsciously. So it is the force of the divine. And Vivekananda was divine God incarnated, and her purpose was to bring this bridge. So unconsciously it is coming out. As I see, I should not say that, people little think that it is very dogmatic, that I am thinking Vivekananda is doing all these things. Vivekananda not the man. Always to think Vivekananda the spirit. Vivekananda is the Satchidananda, that consciousness which out of infinite compassion comes down into the human form for the good of all. So we are very blessed that we come over here at least once a year. We celebrate it in a big way, but we are sorry. But this year, because of the pandemic, we could not get the company of our devotees, but we are actually connecting to this streaming, to this YouTube. But in heart you are here, and we are also here to feel the vibration what Vivekananda left for us. So not only that we used to come every month, that is also stopped now, but let the thing settle. But let us take the spirit of Vivekananda, as Swami Vivekananda's words are said, that it may be that I shall cast this body off like an old worn out garment, but I shall not cease to work. I shall inspire men everywhere until the world shall know that it is one with God. See the mission of Vivekananda. It is not a human mind can think of that. I maybe cast this body off, yes, he has done that. But his promise is that I shall not cease to work, but I shall inspire men. Understand? Inspire men does not mean that he will be coming in front of you, but inspire from the heart. And that heart is awakening. And he's keeping his promise. And his goal is not small, saying that until the world shall know that he is one with God. Oh my God, what a plan! What a master plan! Who can think of this master plan? humanly impossible to think. We think that few people of a particular land, particular country, particular group may be liberated. But it is not that. It is the thinking that the awakening and he is silently working. So let us catch that vibration and inspire ourselves and get into that idea of oneness and that spirit of Vivekananda awareness. So I pray to Swami Vivekananda to shower his blessings upon all of us so that we can catch the inspiration what he is continuously giving. And let us, our heart be open to that and we become blessed by that. Namaskar. Thank you.
We're going to sing Khandana Bhava Bandhana, Breaker, composed by Swami Vivekananda in the Bengali. And this is apparently our traditional practice at the Vivekananda House pilgrimage. We are supposed to be Arthi from Hollywood, but we can't do that because we're all here. So we are going to do it from here. Our Khandana Bhava Bandhana. Thou art above the gunas three, knowledge divine, not flesh. Thou whom the cosmos wears, a diamond at its heart. Let us look deep in thine eyes. They are bright with the wisdom of God, that can wake us from Maya's stun. Let us hold fast to thy feet, treading the ways of the world to safety. O drunk with love, God drunk and lover, in thee all paths of all yogas meet. Lord of the worlds, thou art ours, who wert born a child of our time, easy of access to us. O merciful, if we take any hold upon God in our prayers, it is by thy grace alone, since all thine austerities were practiced for our sake. How great was thy sacrifice, freely choosing thy birth in this prison, our iron age, to unchain us and set us free. Perfect, whom lust could not taint, nor passion nor gold draw near. O Master of all who renounce, fill our hearts full of love for thee. Thou hast finished with fear and with doubt, standing firm in the vision of God, refuge to all who have cast fame, fortune, and friends away. Without question thou shelterest us, and the world's great sea in its wrath seems shrunk to the puddle that fills the hoofprint in the clay. Speech cannot hold thee, nor mind, yet without thee we think not, nor speak. Love, who art partial to none, we are equal before thy sight. Taker away of our pain, we salute thee, though we are blind. Come to the heart's black cave, and illumine, thou light of the light.